Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and ever since the Realms went live for Midnight Beta, I've been diving into as much endgame content as I can, and I've actually been able to spend quite a decent bit of time in PvP. Since Outlaw Rook's got through a number of changes, I wanted to see how they perform against other players, and right now it looks to be a very giga strong spec for the time being. Likely we get hit with more tuning in the future, but there's so many different class changes for checkout, so many streamlines and simplifications of builds that will change the way that our classes are going to be and play within PvP. But also, PvP itself in Midnight is going through a large number of changes, from systems, the content, and even adding a whole new zone for those of you interested in World PvP specifically. So for today's video, I thought it would be a good idea to do a full comprehensive overview of all the major PvP adjustments that will be arriving as part of the Midnight expansion update, just to make sure that you're getting yourself prepped up for it ahead of time before you dive into the beta, or potentially before you dive into the Midnight pre-patch event, which should hopefully will be getting some sort of an announcement for, hopefully sometime soon. But with that being said, as always, if you guys want to keep up with all things Midnight Beta, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So one of the biggest things, and I'm going to go over the bullet points here in the order that I think are the most interesting or the most important, but one of the biggest things you're going to notice for PvP in Midnight, whether you play it on the beta or like during pre-patch or Midnight, is crowd controls are going through some wild changes. And normally you could spam a certain type of a crowd control, since they're all broken down into different types, like stuns, incapacitate, disorient, knockdowns, knockbacks, and other things. Normally you can spam a certain type of a crowd control until it hits a diminishing returns, otherwise known as DR. So take mechanics like a rogue, for example, with their stuns, and it feels like rogues have a billion stuns that they throw out in PvP. The first stun from Rogue is going to be full duration, normally about 5 seconds. The second stun the Rogue hits you with, if it's like the same duration, let's say it's about 2.5 seconds. It's about half in value. Third stun is usually quarter in value. And then afterwards, after 3 stuns back to back to back, you are immune to stuns. Used to be the number between 20 to 25 seconds in the past. Most players usually don't try to restun until about 20 seconds or so to make sure that the DRs fall off. However, in Midnight, the DR durations are now going to be down to 16 seconds of immunity. So it basically is going to give you a shorter window between how often you can get stunned, but first stun is going to be full value, second stun is reduced half value, but then you are immune. So instead of having that third DR on a stun, disorient, fear, you basically can get hit by 2 polymorphs, 2 stuns, 2 fears, 2 knockbacks, and then you become immune to that effect for 16 seconds. So that is going to be the biggest change within Midnight, is you won't be able to crowd control players and constantly CC them over and over and over. You could only chain CC a handful of times from the same type of CC. So players will have to get a little bit more, I guess, creative when it comes to some of the crowd control chains within PvP, but it also means that if you're someone who hates just being constantly stun locked back to back to back, you likely see a lot less of that heading into this next expansion. Another thing to note is the stat squish. It is going to mean our numbers are going to be really tiny in this expansion. It doesn't necessarily mean that the gameplay is going to change too much. It just means that I will be able to work with more manageable numbers that are a little bit easier to parse. Health numbers, damage numbers, healing numbers, all of those are going to be shrunk. However, even though those numbers are shrunk, it doesn't mean that abilities that you're currently hitting within PvP are all of a sudden going to deal less damage. So like if you're a mage and you're running around hitting people for big glacial spikes, those abilities are still going to hit players very hard, but the numbers for all those abilities are going to get shrunk, and it is going to, again, like I said, make it a little bit easier for you to figure out which abilities are hitting harder and which ones are not. Because right now you're hitting for millions of damage, so what is the difference between, you know, hitting for 1,000,000.1 or 1,000,000.2, 1,000,000.3? All those numbers feel very close to each other. But when you have an ability hit for 10,000 and then another hits for 30,000, there's a pretty big difference in terms of how hard that impacts the enemy's health bar and how impactful and effective that ability is compared to the other. Like, those delineations are just super nice, and I think it could potentially make PvP and damage output a little bit more satisfying in the process. Another thing that is changing drastically is going to be a UI. They're essentially removing a lot of the combat add-on functionality out of this expansion. You are still going to have access to a large number of add-ons at the end of the day, but they are removing a lot of the add-ons for PvP, for PvE when it comes to class ability management, telling you enemy mechanics, or even the ones that will feed you additional combat information. But in PvP, certain things are going to be very, very important, like knowing when an enemy has major offensive cooldowns, or knowing when an enemy, or let's say an ally, even has any defenses for you to manage as a healer. Like, are they going to be okay by themselves, or are they actually just going to die unless you hit them with a big defensive? And that type of crucial information, even the stuff like crowd controls and diminished returns, is going to be extremely important for players that are going to be losing that in the next expansion, which can give you information that allows you to make better decision-making skills within PvP. So they're trying to make some of those things a little bit more native to the Blizzard base UI. So you'll be able to sell information like whether your allies have defenses or have externals to grant you. You're going to be able to track enemy cooldowns a little bit better with the health bars or over on the right hand side with the arena tab. And you're also going to be able to see diminished returns more clearly. So if you're a class like rogue or a mage or any other classes that play around crowd control abilities heavily, you're going to be able to make sure that those icons are as big as they need to be when it comes to DR, in order to make it that much easier for you to make those decision-making skills, whether it is in 2v2 arenas or 3v3 or possibly solo shuffle. Another big feature of PvP in Midnight is actually going to be this very area as part of the zone right here, which is a massive area called Slayer's Rise. It is essentially a big open world area for world PvP. Essentially what they wanted to do is create a dedicated space that will be a PvP battleground, or rather a PvP playground, perfect for players looking for never-ending outdoor PvP content. Like, maybe you'll be hanging around in war mode, and let's say, like, you know, outside of Solomon in Eversong Woods, maybe the war mode stuff, the world mode PvP is a little bit light. Maybe there's just not as many people in Zulaman, or you're having a hard time finding other players to fight against in Harandar. You should always be able to head to Voidstorm and head to the northern side of the Voidstorm right here to find Slayer's Rise if you're looking for that constant, consistent, regular action for PvP. And always should be able to find PvP in this area specifically at all times of the day. The zone will feature many quests, like weekly quests, as well as PvP world quests, in order to encourage players to find one another in the middle of the zone, in order to encourage more PvP faction combat. And there also will be a number of events in this area specifically, like escort quests where you have to escort your faction's Dominar, slowing down the enemy Dominar while making sure yours is nice and safe in order to get them to the objective to earn additional bonuses for your faction. There's a Void capture event where you'll capture a Void from barrels and try to return it to your faction's turning point. But as players try to run back that Void, you can snipe them, steal the Void, and take it for your faction. So there will be a lot of opportunity for rogues and other stealthy ambush classes to sneak up on unsuspecting targets. Ethereal control zones where you'll be able to accumulate points by controlling ethereal beacons, and the team with the most points ends up winning the event. There's also an event called Ethereal Disruption where you'll be able to slay Shadow Guard and then get energy from them, turn that energy into Dominars who will empower you to let you go after other players and absolutely wipe them off the face of the world. There'll be Void Scavenge events where during the event, slaying other players will grant you a Void Tainted Remains, which is one of those little quest currencies that you can need while you're in the area. So it essentially just encourages more death matches. If you're not really into objective-based play and you just want to slaughter all the players, just join a Void Scavenge event to be able to get even more honor and even more of that weekly currency. There's also going to be Void posts for you to control, and I've actually captured them once. There's one in the south, one over in the west, and one over in the east, and they kind of remind me of like the flag capture points that you had during TBC specifically. Going to the original Hellfire Peninsula, there was a bunch of objectives which are not showing up on my map right now, but there's like 3 points that you collect, and if you collect all of them, you get a buff for your faction. I'm not exactly sure what the Slayer's Rise points are supposed to do. I captured them. I didn't really see if that gave me a buff or started up an event or anything like that. It was really hard to tell, but they were active for a little bit and then they come off, so it gives you an opportunity for the opposite faction to potentially control all 3 at the same time, and players can fight over these objectives for as much as you want to. Essentially, they want the zone to be just a great PvP hangout area with a neutral hub down in the middle, as well as with PvP vendors, as well as some your own faction-specific areas like Spire. Grief Spire will be an alliance-heavy area where you can just go there and rest amongst your faction. The Horde one will have the Spire of Hate. While they are kind of like a resting area, you can still get attacked by another faction. You are in the Voidstorm after all, which is like a constantly hostile area, so you're not always safe. But if you do just want to chill, go to Master's Purge, and there's a dueling area right down here where you can duel against other players. Hopefully in the future they'll add some sort of a buff. Maybe if you're dueling other players in this area specifically, like win or lose, you gotta reset on your cooldowns, because it'll be an awesome place to just duel others, get a bit of a warm up before you start competing in all of your ranked PvP or possibly in world PvP. And yeah, they essentially just want Void Zone to be just an ever ongoing constant area where PvPers can fight each other, buy gear, test that gear against each other in duels, as well as have some fun with open world PvP. Oh, I almost forgot. There's also a vendor here in Slayer's Rise called Thraxadar. At least I think I said that name correctly. And he has a bunch of items that you'll be able to obtain once you get enough reputation with the Slayer's Duelium, which is this area right here where players are dueling one another. There'll be a bunch of quests for you to complete, and as you get more reputation with them, you'll be able to purchase a variety of items for a new currency that is used to purchase cosmetic things. Voidlight Marl. Housing items will be one of those things, like this orb that spins around, and you'll be able to modify that in your home so you can have it spin in any direction. There's this big banner, the Void Sky banner, which looks absolutely fantastic. There's also a toy for Galactic Flag of Victory, which you'll be placing on enemy corpses. So yet another flag of ownership that they're adding into the game. Medusa, which is a brand new pet that you'll be able to add to your collections. But you also have two mounts, a Prowling Shredclaw as well as Frenzied Shredclaw. So it looks like one has a bit of this horde theme in, with a bit of red on the gills and a bit on the paws and the fur in the back, while the other has a bit more of a blue look to it. But they look absolutely fantastic. Some of the coolest, some of the most vicious mounts you've seen. So that'll be at least a couple of things that you'll be able to add to your collection as you progress through a new faction within this area specifically. Speaking of open world PvP, it looks like the gear vendors for open world war mode are also being buffed up as well at midnight. It looks like brand new sets as of the most recent build have been found with war mode items, specifically offering players new set bonuses. Normally when you're playing your class, you get tier set bonuses that are like, you know, PvE or PvP tier set bonuses. They rotate every new season, and at the very beginning of midnight, it's going to be the very baseline bonuses that make you take certain talents or pick up certain abilities within your class tree, but nothing that you have to invest like a lot of points into necessarily. However, those tier sets are not always really good in war mode, and they wanted to make sure that players that love open world PvP have their own tier sets and their own gear, which gains more value in open world content. These new bonuses with a 2 set will increase your versatility while war mode is active, so this does not work in battlegrounds or arenas. This works out in open world specifically, so you can get some more of that defensive and damage stat overall. Your 4 set increases your primary stat, which is strength, agility, or intellect, so it's a pretty big gain for all the classes by 7%, and stamina by 10%, which is a significant bit of survivability increase, all while war mode is active. So again, these bonuses will not work in battlegrounds or rated arenas, but they will work in open world PvP. So if you're somebody who's really interested about open world PvP content specifically, these sets might be some of the best out there, and at least it grants those players that are really interested in open world combat more than anything, that just want to hang out in Slayer's Rise, fight other players, experience a massive faction combat between Alliance and the Horde. Those of you might actually find those pieces a lot better overall. Slayer's Rise. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give the video a like, as I would very much appreciate it. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with all the regular changes regarding Midnight Beta, as we'll be getting more new builds the closer we get to the release of the expansion. With that being said, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in our next one.